There are already at least a dozen cases in court challenging these various mandates. Business for South Africa, B4SA, is planning to apply for a High Court declaratory order to get clarity on vaccine mandates. And I'm joined now by Martin Kingston of B4SA. He's also Vice President of Business Unity South Africa. Mr. Kingston, thank you so much for your time. What exactly is a declaratory order? How do you go about getting one? And how is it going to create certainty and, I suppose, one single stance on vaccine mandates in South Africa?
Well, perhaps that's the starting point, Sally, which is that we all need certainty about the status of any vaccine mandate. A number of employers, both in the public and the private sector, including institutions such as universities, have put them in place, many of them effective either from last year or from the beginning of this year, to try and increase the level of vaccinations for those operating in the workforce or indeed entering the workplace. Whether they be workers or not, both to reduce the risk to the individual workers and anybody else associated, as I said, with the workplace. And we all know, and I think it is common cause, that the risk both of transmission but also of severe infection, let alone of death, is very substantially reduced by the vaccine, the first vaccine, the second vaccine, and now the boosters that are being administered. So we as B4SA, alongside BOOSA and other business organizations and sector organizations, have been driving a process of trying to persuade businesses and indeed society more broadly to get vaccinated. And I need to emphasize the word persuasion. Everybody has the right not to be vaccinated, and everybody indeed has the right to be vaccinated. But businesses have an obligation to ensure the safety and security, as I said, of those who come onto their premises, including their workers. Now, there's much debate about this, not just in South Africa, of course. We've seen this play out across the world, both again in the public and the private sector, in America, in Europe, in the UK, as an increasing number of institutions, businesses have indeed put in place vaccination mandates. And we want to have legal certainty and clarity. And that indeed is the purpose of seeking a declaratory order, so that the High Court can give guidance and confirm what we believe is already the case, which is that it is indeed both a right and an obligation of employers to ensure that their workforce is safe.
So I was reading in the Business Day that you still have to, or you're still in the process of gathering documentation. So talk to me how it works. Is it a process where you present to the court what you think a vaccine mandate rule book should look like, and the court then decides whether to approve that or not?
Well, it's more complicated than that. In fact, what we need to do is we need to attach ourselves to an existing case. We're seeing an increasing number of situations arising where either employers or employees are contesting whether or not there's a requirement for vaccination to take place. And at the same time, we're gathering expert witnesses, particularly but not only medical witnesses, so that we can make the case for the fact that there is actually very significant benefit that accrues to the workplace, that it reinforces the rights and obligations, as I said, both of workers and indeed of the employer. And it's likely to be a High Court action. I know that people have been confused about that, where the High Court then confirms the position, if we are lucky enough for that to be the case. We think that will be the case, that's being sought by business generally. By the way, that's quite independent of the fact that, as you indicated, a number of businesses have already put these in place. You know, Discovery, or Mutual, Standard Bank, Anglo-American. There's a very significant and increasing growing list of large and small businesses, just as we see with institutions. So, for example, Wits University, Stellenbosch, UCT have all put in place vaccination mandates. What the president has referred to is the fact that within the NEDLAC structures, the social partners of government, labor, civil society and business have all agreed on the need to increase the level of vaccination and to explore wherever appropriate, practical and possible the implementation of vaccination mandates and the adjustment and alteration of regulation and legislation that already exists, including occupational health and safety legislation, which is ongoing work.
There may be broad agreement, but we also know that there have been protests. We know that some student bodies are threatening protest. And we also know that, for example, teachers are not mandated to have the vaccine, strongly encouraged. And I don't think any other government workspaces have a mandate. Do you think it would make a difference if a government actually put its money where its mouth is and put in vaccine mandates?
Yeah, we think it would be extremely helpful, Sally. Indeed, the Minister of Health last year made it clear the government, as an employer, including the Department of Health, was looking at the viability and the practicality of putting in vaccine mandates. We've seen in many countries across the world that those mandates have indeed been put in place for healthcare workers. We're not insisting, I need to emphasize, we're saying that the first and most important route to be explored is one of persuasion on the merits of the case based upon a fact-based approach. We've got 2 years now of empirical evidence that as a world and as a country we can rely upon, but we need to be able to motivate appropriately and correctly to each and every individual the benefits and merits of vaccination. It's not a question of doing so by edict.
Yeah. If you get this declaratory order, and I know it's been somewhat delayed, what happens next? It doesn't make it law. It then just provides a clear set of guidelines, perhaps, am I right, to make sure that businesses and any institutions
That's exactly right.
are more covered?
What I think we will see, yes, I think we will see a very significant acceleration in the context of businesses that step up to the plate across a whole host of sectors. And when I say businesses, large and small, across all sectors, whether they be multinationals or domestic South African businesses, in the design and implementation of those mandates. And for the most part, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Of course, we need to make sure that the specific aspects are flexed to the particular circumstances of each and every business. But we think that it should be very easy to implement the overall guidelines exactly as you say. And we think that there will be significant reinsurance and certainty provided.
Absolutely, which is what we need very, very quickly. Timeframes, when is this going to happen?
Well, we would like to think that in the next few weeks we'll be able to actually have a High Court hearing set down. In the meanwhile, of course, many of these mandates are now kicking in, and the consequence of them kicking in is that employees are theoretically at risk if they can't be persuaded to be vaccinated and if they can't work away from the workplace. And that's the last thing we want in the current set of circumstances in South Africa, where we need to maximize employment rather than have any risk to people's status as employees. So we hope to be able to do so, as I said, in the next couple of weeks.
Thanks so much. Martin Kingston of B4SA is also Vice President of Business Unity South Africa. Now,